In this video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 core competency areas associated with social and emotional learning, or SEL. We'll identify those 5 areas, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can start to think about aligning musical experiences in your classroom, and maybe for yourself as a way to connect with and foster and nurture the goals that are set forth in these 5 areas. That's what we're going to do. And I'll give you some examples, some ideas you can try, and directions you can at least start to think about how you can design experiences yourself for your students. So what are the 5 core SEL areas or competencies? Number 1, self-awareness. Number 2, self-management. How do I cope? How do I deal with the things that come up? Social awareness, right? My social world. And then relationship skills, which you could say are social management skills in a way. And then responsible decision making, right? So let's go down the list really quick, and I'm just going to point out a few things, and I'm going to put on my music therapist hat because as a music therapist, these are the kinds of things that I actually think about when I'm designing and facilitating musical experiences for people. Because of course in music therapy, the focus is on the person and their functionality and how they relate to the world, how they relate to themselves and others, and we're really not focused on the musical outcome as much. So I think I'm going to share with you some of my thinking as a music therapist, what I would pay attention to, things I might try, and just talk about that a little bit. And this is just an overview, so I just want to get you started. Let's talk about self-awareness. And in music therapy, we start with an idea in music with the person, and we talk about their intra-musical experience. Intra meaning internal. So every one of your students is, of course, they're having a social experience in a music group, but they are also having an intra-musical experience. So what is that? The intra-musical experience is for me, my experience, my thoughts, feelings, impulses, as they relate to the music that I am making. So it's my own choices, the music that I'm making, how I think and feel about it. And that's all internal for me. So that really right now it has nothing to do with social interaction, even though I could be relating to something else like a beat or a song that's coming in that I'm listening to, but I still have my own set of decisions, of actions, of reactions or experiences, thoughts, feelings, emotions to all the things that I'm doing personally. And something that you can tune into as an educator or music facilitator is, what do you think somebody's intra-musical experience is like? And some indicators of that might be body posture, their facial expression, what we call affect. Sometimes you get big indicators like if somebody's grimacing or they're smiling or laughing. What do they look like when they're engaged in music? And what do you think might be? We don't know for sure, but there's some ways you can kind of have an educated guess about what somebody might be going through. And then, of course, we can use extra musical experiences like discussion or art making, poetry, writing, writing things, creating other kinds of art to then further externalize what might be happening with somebody inside, so that they can develop self-awareness. So musical experiences have a big potential for helping anybody develop self-awareness, in as much as we could discuss how did that feel? What were you thinking during that? Were you frustrated? Were you excited? What was that like for you? And then by discussing or expressing those experiences, the student could become more aware of themselves, of what their experience is or was in the music making. So that's just one area you can think about. What is somebody's intra-musical experience? And then as we move to the social component, how does that then, inform or interact or change the dynamic when we combine it with others? So the next area we're going to look at is self-management. And of course, this is a big area. We could talk about things like impulse control, right? What are the choices that we make in the moment with regard to our own thoughts and feelings again. So I'm having an intramusical and intrapersonal experience. I'm having my own experience of the music, but then what happens as a result of that? What do I do? Do I choose to reach out? Do I go inward? Does it prompt sort of an extroverted response? In some people it does. In others it might prompt kind of an introverted response or withdraw. So we can look at self-management in that way in terms of what are the choices that I'm making as a result of my thoughts and feelings about what I'm doing or what's happening in terms of my own experience and my experience with other influences, right? Whether that's just music in general or people or individuals. So that's another opportunity that connects with decision making, and I would say processing emotions and feelings and thoughts. And so something you can do in music, again, is to either discuss what was that like, what were you thinking, why I saw that you did this. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What was going on for you in that moment when I saw you do X, Y, Z? And again, raising the person's awareness of what they're doing, and also then discussing some choices about, okay, when you're feeling like this, maybe you can try this or this, and not that, not this. So there's opportunities there as the educator or facilitator of the musical experience to cultivate and steer the students in certain directions and connect more with those SEL competencies in that way. So let's look at social awareness. Of course, this is a huge area in music. Music making really is a social opportunity on so many levels. So we talked about intra-musical experiences, which we all have when we're making music. But probably most importantly, we have inter-musical relationships that we build and experiences, inter-musical relationships, meaning how is the music that I'm making relating to the music that somebody else is making or the music as a whole that the group is making. And I want to say right now that intra-musical experiences, both. Musical experiences often create and relate to personal experiences. So inter-musical relationships and roles give rise to an implied interpersonal relationship. I'll give you an example. If somebody's playing something and I choose to play something that aligns with them, that's a supportive relationship. If I choose to align with them and do something that is grounding or very supportive, in other words, I'm supplying a steady beat for someone and they're playing something else on top of it or even soloing, then I'm even more in a supportive role. If I play something, let's say I play a solo over somebody else's pattern, then I'm putting myself in more of a free form relationship. I'm relating to them, but I'm kind of putting them in service to me in a way, right? And then I could choose to play something completely different that even adds tension or that creates tension with what somebody else is playing. And so the implication there is that I'm not aligning, I'm not joining, I'm actually intentionally not, or maybe not intentionally, but I'm not creating a musical relationship that is harmonious, and therefore what's the implication of that? And we don't know if somebody who's not playing well with others is doing it intentionally or not. Some people just have trouble playing music together with others, like aligning with the beat or singing on pitch or anything. So we don't want to assume that somebody who's not aligning or who's playing something that's causing tension is doing it intentionally. Chances are they're probably not doing it intentionally. But it's something that comes up. And there's lots of roles and responsibilities. In music therapy, we look at lots of roles and responsibilities because we're looking for relationship building in the music. So we can talk about being a ground or supporter. We can talk about being a partner, right? Just matching somebody else's playing. We can talk about empathy, showing empathy by reflecting back to somebody what they played. In other words, echoing or mirroring the music of someone else. which is an empathetic technique that we use. We can talk about being a soloist, a follower, a leader. All these kinds of relationships come up in music, and those are all opportunities to create social relationships and then therefore increase our awareness of how we are being in the music, the choices we're making. These are all choices, and they're all ways of being in the music, and they indicate not only inter-musical relationships, but also interpersonal relationships. And that's one of the nice things about music class, is that we can create music together and focus on the music, creating harmony, creating supportive musical relationships, and then the implication of that is that we are creating social relationships, interpersonal relationships, where we feel supported, we feel seen, our ideas are considered and represented and shared, and we work through all of that. So that's one of the big potentials in the music classroom, in the music setting. And that, of course, moves us to relationship skills. Relationship skills is something that relates to what I just talked about. So social awareness is one thing. You could look at social awareness. This is the last category. What are the opportunities? What's the landscape? Who's doing what? Let me look and listen and see. And then what am I going to do within that landscape? What are my choices going to be? And again, there's myriad opportunities to connect with people through music, through singing, through movement, through art making, through poetry, through all kinds of different art and music-related experiences, to create different types of relationships, to foster or develop those kinds of relationships, and then as a result, build actual personal relationships where a student might feel more included, more validated, more seen, and have the freedom also within the experience to represent him or herself in a way that they want, that's appropriate for them, and also to be accepted in different ways of being in the music experience. So there's lots of freedom there, lots of opportunities. So as you're designing your own experiences and thinking about how you facilitate, in other words, what do you do in the moment in your music class when your students are having a musical experience? What kinds of prompts or suggestions or nudges do you want to give, and why? All right, because that's up to you. That's your choice. But you need to be aware of these dynamics in order to be effective in that way. And another example might be in the relationship skills arena, let's just say. As an example, we're all presented with an opportunity to play, and then what is my choice? How do I engage with others? Do I engage with others? To what degree do I make myself vulnerable or not? Or am I protecting? Am I engaging or not? Again, back to that kind of, am I in the extrovert end of the spectrum or the introvert end of the spectrum? And what are the relationships that I create? It's really interesting, and we could go on. That could be a whole course just by itself. But the last category or core competency skill area in SEL that we're going to look at is responsible decision making. And of course, this relates not only to oneself in terms of the decisions that I would make for myself that I could consider responsible or responsive to my own needs and impulses, but what are the choices that I make with regard to others? And I think that's really where in the SEL framework they're most focused is, and I'll give you an example, is are there times where I might forego my own desires to, say, play an instrument and allow somebody else to have a turn with an instrument because I feel like it'd just be better for the overall group experience. It would be better for the community if I did that, because maybe I don't need to have a turn with the djembe right now. I could let somebody else have a turn. So how do I respond to the opportunities and actions by others that are happening in the community in that moment, and what am I basing my choices and actions on? Am I basing it on the idea of giving other people opportunities, or helping other people push themselves to reach some level that they haven't reached before, do something, or take a chance? Am I encouraging them to do that? Or am I doing kind of the opposite? Am I teasing somebody? Am I saying, what am I saying to people? How am I looking at people? What's my body language? How am I relating and influencing the people in my community? All right. And you can think about maybe an effective leader. Maybe people that you look up to and you think, wow, they're really positively impacting the community. And that could be a community of professionals or wherever. And you can think about the way they do that. What do they do? What kinds of things do they say? And maybe more importantly, what kinds of things do they not do and not say? So how do I balance my own needs with those of my community members? And that all relates to responsible decision making. So when we say responsible, we're really talking about balance of the individual as it relates to the group, and having empathy, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, of course, having a greater awareness of what's happening outside of yourself. So we started with self-awareness, and we're going to end with community awareness and making decisions based on that awareness. All right. So, of course, in music making, as you can imagine, we have opportunities up and down all these 5 competency areas to not only create musical experiences, and I say musical experiences because I don't want to just think about music like instrumental playing. Music experiences can be movement, they can be discussing lyrics, they can be creating artwork to a piece of music, they could be listening experiences and then discussing it, reflecting, what we call lyric discussion or lyric analysis, or just music discussion, music analysis, guided imagery. It could be anything with music, anything that has to do with music. It could be compositional, it could be recreative, it could be improvised, it could be just receptive, like even just relaxing to music, right? Breathing, moving. So everything is on the table when you're designing a music experience or a music session with lots of different types of musical experiences. So what you can do as an educator and facilitator of social and emotional learning is maybe just consider a few goals or objectives that you want to try to hit in the class. You want to offer these opportunities for your students, like an opportunity to talk about something, talk about a feeling or a thought or an emotion, and then design the experience so that opportunity presents itself. So there is a time and a place in the music experience. There's a little window there, and that could be an opportunity. And we're not trying to make people do things in music class, but we want to offer opportunities and encouragement so that a student will take that window, they'll open that window and they'll go through that window or doorway and take the opportunity. But the opportunity needs to be there in order for them to take it, of course, right? So that's your job as the designer of the musical experiences and the facilitator in the moment. And those are all different skills that we could talk about on a different day that you want to work on and develop over time. And you can do it. It does take time. It takes experience. So you can start with something easy and then go from there. And if, of course, we're not trying to be therapists for students, but group musical experiences are a really wonderful format where, because it's largely nonverbal and because it touches us in an emotional place, in this kind of feeling place, things can come up in music that don't come up in other classes or other areas. And that's great. However, if something comes up and you don't feel equipped to address it, that's okay. Don't try to address it, but make sure the student understands that you can connect them with someone who can address it and pass that information on. Talk to your peers, your colleagues, your special ed teachers, your therapists, your counselors, and make sure the student it gets taken care of, and make sure the student knows that they're going to have opportunities to process things, talk about things down the road. And that way the music classroom can become a really functional place, a safe space for children to express themselves, and they know that if something does happen, they're also going to be continued to be taken care of and through that whole process. And that could be a wonderful experience to have, especially in an elementary school or even middle school, high school. I'm sure I know I would have welcomed that kind of opportunity way back in the early 1970s. Okay, that's all I have for you in this video. I hope this has helped you, give you some ideas that you can try, and I want to wish you all the best as you design and facilitate social and emotional learning experiences for your students.